Hey guys, today we'll be taking a look at this 2011 Mac Mini. I got it as for parts for repair because the hard drive was missing and the HDMI out port was not working. So we're going to open it up and take a look inside. As you can see, it's missing a bunch of the screws and it's missing its RAM. So we're going to start by unscrewing the fan and the Wi-Fi antenna and taking both of those out. The hard drive connector is loose in the chassis, so we'll take that out. Now the motherboard isn't screwed into the chassis properly, so we can just disconnect that from the power supply and slide it out of the chassis. And set that aside. Now just going to take a closer look, and as you can see, those fans are absolutely mangled. I don't know what happened to it. And the RAM slot is also melted in some parts. The motherboard is missing the connector for the front LED and IR receiver. So now we're just going to take some pliers and try and bend those fins back the best we can. Just try and straighten those out. We're going to take the heatsink off in a second so it doesn't have to be perfect. Speaking of which, we're going to take our T8 screwdriver and start to undo those screws holding the heatsink in place. One of the screws does have a standoff screw in it. That should be a T6 driver bit. And we're just undoing those screws in a opposing fashion so we release the pressure on the CPU. We'll have to unscrew the speaker to get access at the last remaining screw. Be mindful of the springs, they're easy to lose. Once those screws are out, there is one more T6 screw near the exhaust that you'll have to undo before we can remove the heatsink fully. Just taking that out, taking a look at it. And the next thing to do is clean off the remaining thermal paste on there. Now the thermal paste just helps the heat from the CPU get into the heatsink, which helps it remove the heat more effectively. There's a small gap between the CPU and the heatsink, so the thermal paste just helps to fill that in and aid in heat transfer. You might take a couple Q-tips with isopropyl alcohol to remove it. You might take a couple Q-tips dipped in isopropyl alcohol to remove all the thermal paste. Just make sure that's nice and clean. No problem there. We're going to be replacing the thermal paste with some Corsair TM30. It's relatively cheap. It's like $7 for 2 grams of metal, and that'll last a while if you're constantly doing repairs and whatnot. So here I'm just bending back the fins a little bit more. So we're going to slide that back on, screw it down in the same fashion as we took it off. Again, make sure not to lose those little springs. They put tension on the heatsink and ensure proper contact. So you might be asking why I bought this broken Mac Mini without video through the HDMI port. Well, originally I was going to use it as a media server but however, since the HDMI port isn't working, I can't connect it to my TV, so I'm just going to use it as a network attached file storage. And once all the screws are on, we can just slide it back into the chassis very carefully. Plug it back into the power supply. And then normally we would screw in a bunch of screws, but when I received the Mini it was missing all those, so this is as good as we can do for now. Expect a repair of the front LED panel in a future video. I can't do that right now, but maybe sometime down the road. We're going to grab a 128GB solid-state drive that I have macOS Mojave pre-installed on. We're going to put in some new RAM, we're going to connect the fan, screw it in, and that is as far as we can go. So, repair complete. Like and subscribe. It really helps me out. We have a Patreon now, so if you want to donate to that, link is in the description, and you will get your name listed in the description. Thank you very much.